I've got some notes for today's video because if you're anything like me, a pedal that has 13 knobs, 2 toggles, and 2 foot switches might feel a little bit daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Today we're going to take a dive into the Endless Sleeper 2 from Beautiful Noise, and we're going to use it as a beginner's guide to shoegaze and lo-fi sounds. We're going to spend some time defining terms like bit crusher, LFO, and talk about how they are incorporated into this pedal to kind of ease your mind about approaching some of these types of effects. But first, let's hear the Endless Sleeper 2 in action. Hey guys, welcome back. Andrew here with Ambient Endeavors. I've been running this channel for about 5 years and have really enjoyed getting to do demos and reviews and topical videos that just kind of hit on how to use the gear, whether it be pedals, amps, or guitars or other musical equipment to make the sounds that are in our heads and to kind of chase down the tones and the sounds that we want to use while we're creating. I've been playing guitar for almost 20 years now and I've just kind of been obsessed with using these little tools and toys with knobs and switches to make some fun and inspiring sounds. So I appreciate you coming along for the journey here. Please hit subscribe below if you want to continue to engage with these videos and see more from the channel. I really appreciate that support. Today we're doing something a little bit different as we highlight a brand new pedal from Beautiful Noise. The Endless Sleeper 2 is out today and we're going to get to this pedal and talk about the control set and the sounds and hear a bunch of sounds from it later on. But first I wanted to address just a couple terms and components of this pedal that, if I'm honest, I'm just kind of getting familiarized with myself. I imagine that some of the vernacular in the pedal world and some of the features that show up on these pedals are new to you or perhaps confusing or abstract, and so we're going to try and break those down today in an effort to help explain what's going on in the Endless Sleeper 2. First of all, we're going to talk about a bit crusher because I think that's one of the coolest aspects of this Endless Sleeper 2. What is a bit crusher? It's a great question. Essentially, you can think about it as a reduction in the quality of the technology that's going on in this pedal. So what's an analogy? We could think about video games and talk about the kind of current high-tech platform, something like a PS5. And a bit crusher would essentially take the quality and the vividness and the response of a PS5 and be able to kind of throttle it down and degrade it into something like a Super Nintendo or earlier. You get this pixelation, you get this kind of graininess, the herky-jerky, the slow. You don't have that vivid hi-fi experience that you would with a PS5 when you're playing a Super Nintendo or an Atari. And so in similar ways, in audio form, the bit crusher is allowing you to take high fidelity sounds that are coming in and degrade it or kind of throttle it back, reduce the bit quality to a level that gives you this really old school texture, low fidelity, grainy and gritty, and it's just a really cool effect. And so that essentially is what the bit crusher is doing, and it's one of the center points of this Endless Sleeper 2 that we'll get into in a second. This is the effect that kind of gives that hazy, gritty, grainy, kind of shimmery sound to a lot of what you hear in genres like shoegaze and lo-fi. You'll hear it in the sound samples later on in the video, and you heard it in the intro track, but there's just kind of a really unique quality to it. It's not quite a shimmer effect. It's not It's not like a ring mod quite, but it has that similar type of texture and timbre as you degrade and kind of crush the resolution, the bit quality of the audio. The next thing we're going to talk about is LFO. It stands for low frequency oscillator, and it essentially just is a waveform generated to oftentimes manipulate some other aspect of the effect. In Endless Sleeper 2, you have 2 LFOs. You can adjust the different wave shapes of those LFOs, and then that will manipulate the delay signal on this pedal to give you some kind of modulation type effects, whether it be chorus, vibrato. You can choose a random waveform in this pedal to kind of give you that, again, irregular, erratic kind of warped vinyl type sound. And you can also create some really dramatic and wide swings in pitch from that LFO controlling the delay. So we're going to talk about that as we get into the control set here, but I wanted to define those two terms to kind of familiarize you with what we mean when we talk about bit crushing, LFO. And I think the rest of the pedal can explain itself in a lot of ways in generality with things like delay and the controls that go along with it, but it's just sort of an entry point for folks that are starting to engage with the sounds and the tones and the textures that you might use in shoegaze music and the lo-fi, ambient, experimental kind of genres. At its core, you have 2 independent delay lines, and so on the left side you'll have controls over the mix of delay 1 and delay 2. You have a delay time control for each of your delays, and you also have a feedback control on the very bottom. In the third row here, you have a control called glide, and that's essentially the depth of the LFO that is manipulating each of your delay lines. So you have that control for each delay line as well, and you can create either subtle kind of modulation, chorusy, vibrato type effects on the delay line, or you can dial it up for a more extreme pitch manipulation of those delay lines. As you go to the right side here, you have your bit crush control labeled crush. You have a mix control for your bit crusher, so you can dial in a really subtle amount of texture to get some sparkle, or you can go all out and get a really kind of smashed, almost fuzz-like texture to the sound. You have your LFO rates, like I mentioned here, that will manipulate the left side here in your delay lines to kind of adjust the intensity of the LFO. And then you also have this toggle here that will set the waveform type for your LFO. So again, you have a sine wave, a square wave, and a random waveform that you can assign to those LFOs each individually. You have your bypass switch over here on the right, and then your left switch is a momentary switch that will induce oscillation. It will sort of set your feedback to max and create this really awesome billowy runaway texture, which is amazing. You heard some of that in the intro as well, and I think that's one of the coolest and most enjoyable parts about this pedal, to kind of be able to play as you are creating and create those billowy runaway oscillation pad type moments. The one knob I overlooked intentionally is this 3 backwards arrow. It's a feedback control that as you dial it up will start to feed the output of delay 2 back into delay 1 and kind of create this third delay effect happening and create some kind of chaos and interesting interplay between all the delay lines. So that is sort of like a feedback control for the delay line back into itself, which can create some really cool moments as well. So there you have it. That's the Endless Sleeper 2. It's from Beautiful Noise. They're over in Australia. I believe it's a one-man shop, and he's been putting out some really cool kind of cult classic type pedals that are often in the vein of these shoegaze, post-rock, ambient, lo-fi type sounds. So check him out and check out the new Endless Sleeper version 2. We're going to run over to some sound samples here in a second. I'm going to be using a Fender Player 2 Jazzmaster. We're going to run it with a Mask Audio Electronic Park Garden Germanium running into the Endless Sleeper 2, then out to a Nunaber wet reverb and onto the Walrus ACS1 Mark II for our amp solution, running that into a warm preamp and then onto my DAW. If you've got any questions or comments, drop them below. If you've got any thoughts or insight into making shoegaze music or lo-fi sounds and textures, drop them below too and we can chat about that. Otherwise, thanks for watching and let's hear some sounds.